Come on, gather round the fire. The night is long, and that wind, it carries whispers of some very old sorrows. I'm just a traveler, sure, but the story I carry is heavier than any pack I've ever owned. A tale that feels like it was pulled from the very bones of the earth. It is a story about a cursed treasure, yes, but it's really about the darkness we all carry inside. And that's exactly why I'm here, in your village, tonight. I'm not looking for a hero's welcome, and I'm not looking for a singer's praise. I am here to give you a warning. So listen and listen closely, because the shadows I'm about to speak of are long, and they can fall upon any one of us. Now, at the heart of all this is a hoard of gold. But please don't picture gleaming coins and sparkling jewels. No, no. I want you to picture a sickness, a symbol for a kind of greed so deep it can actually curdle the soul. This was never just treasure. It was a catalyst for destruction, a sort of dark gravity fueled by the hunger for power and status. And its poison only grew with time, becoming a weight pressing down on generation after generation. To really understand this curse, you have to understand its most famous victim. We have to talk about Fafnir. We have to talk about how the allure of absolute power can do so much more than corrupt a man. It can unmake him completely. It can peel away his humanity, layer by layer, until all that's left is the beast that was waiting underneath. You see, this is how it happens. A four-step fall into damnation. It all starts with just a tiny seed of greed, a simple hunger for something that isn't his. And that hunger, well, it leads to the ultimate betrayal, turning on his own family for gold. After that, the soul itself just begins to rot. Unchecked ambition hollows you out, leaving nothing inside but the raw desire to possess. And then, that final stage. The monster takes over, not just in spirit, but in Fafnir's case, in actual flesh and scale. Fafnir's transformation, it wasn't really magic. It was more like an alchemy of greed. You see, he traded his empathy for avarice. He swapped kinship for a bitter, cold isolation. And he threw away his nobility for pure, raw brutality. The story warns us that this beast, it isn't something foreign. It's a potential that's already inside us, just sleeping, waiting for the promise of absolute power to wake it up. It's dehumanization made real. Now, you might be thinking, a curse like this only touches the wicked, right? That the good and the noble, they're somehow immune. But that is the Horde's cruelest trick, because the poison seeps into everything. It taints even the brightest of heroes and turns their greatest triumphs into these awful personal tragedies. It becomes a burden passed down to even the most worthy. And this forces us to ask a really difficult question. What happens when a hero is destined to confront this kind of evil? What becomes of the person who has to face down a monster born of pure greed and then claim its prize? Does he actually cleanse the world? Or does he just pick up the curse and start carrying it himself? And that brings us to Sigurd, a man descended from the gods themselves, fated for legendary deeds. And he does what heroes do. He slays the dragon, a great act for the good of the whole world. But in doing so, he can't help but be touched by the Horde's corruption. The victory comes with these massive moral costs, tangling his fate and his honor in the very same curse he was trying to end. His noble blood becomes both a blessing and a terrible, terrible burden. In the legend, there's this moment when Sigurd tastes the dragon's blood, and suddenly he can understand what the birds are saying. But this isn't just some fairy tale detail. Think about what it really means. He gains a new kind of perception, a dangerous knowledge that comes directly from the source of all that corruption. It's the taste of power itself. It grants you sight. It shows you truths you never saw before, but it always, always demands a piece of your soul in return. And this is where the story gets bigger than just one man. It becomes this long, dark shadow that it casts over time. This isn't just Fafnir's story anymore, or even Sigurd's. It's the story of a wound that just won't heal, a generational curse, where the sins of the father become the destiny of the son. It's a cycle of violence and betrayal, passed down just like a cursed inheritance. You know, the original sin, the very first act that stained the gold with blood, was the ultimate betrayal. Greed didn't just create a monster. It destroyed the most sacred bond there is, family. The struggle for dominance turned brother against brother, and that single act of violence became an echo that just keeps repeating through the ages. Look at how it works. The curse just becomes this terrible legacy. The father's sin demands the son's vengeance. And then that act of vengeance becomes the grandson's burden. It stops being about choices. It just becomes a matter of cold, unthinking fate. The shadow of that horde remains long, long after anyone even remembers why the first crime was committed. It proves that this cycle of greed, it's just relentless. And so, we come to the end of my tale, and the real heart of my warning. Why tell this story of ancient kings and dragons to you tonight? Because the horde, it isn't buried in some forgotten cave. It's buried inside each and every one of us. This ancient fable is, at its core, really about our own nature. You see, power, just like that cursed gold, is an amplifier. It doesn't create your character, it reveals it, often with brutal honesty. Just like at Sigurd, a hero, absolutely, but a flawed one. Power takes the nobility that's already in you and can make it greater, sure, but it also takes every flaw, every weakness, every tiny seed of greed, and it makes it monstrous. That's the truth at the center of this whole legend. This story, it's a mirror. Fafnir's transformation, Sigurd's tragic heroism, that endless, bloody cycle of vengeance, it all just reflects the potential for corruption that exists inside every human heart. The horde is the avarice we try to hide, the ambition we refuse to check, the hunger for status that can make us betray everything we claim to hold dear. My tale is done. The warning has been given. This ancient story is here to remind us that we all have to guard our hearts against the greed that turns people into monsters and brothers into enemies. So I'll leave you with this one question to think about by your fire. You've heard of the dragon, Fafnir. Now, look inside yourself. What monster do you keep chained?